Hi everybody, welcome to the Wolfman Gardening Channel. As you can probably hear, the rain just drove us out of the garden and back into the house. So, although the rain's great and we need the rain, I was really planning on getting a lot of stuff planted out today, but with the rain, doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do that. So, that isn't going to stop us from gardening. So what we are going to do is we're going to go inside. We're going to talk about seeding our watermelons, our honeydews, and maybe even some flowers for pollinators for later on. So let's go inside. Alright, here we are back inside. A little bummed right now because I really wanted to be out in the garden today. We really needed to be planting a lot of stuff. I kind of want to go over some of the stuff that we can direct seed or start indoors and transplants. So there's a lot of stuff that I start indoors that could actually be started once the soil warms up. You could start these out in the garden or in a soil in your raised bed and just direct seed them into the ground, and they'll usually do just fine. Like your cucumbers, all the ones that we planted and transplanted and potted up, all of those technically you could actually grow them outside and seed them outside, and they'll do very well. Another thing is your zucchini, your squash, all types of your gourd family. You could actually start those outside when it warms up, and they'll be fine. Days like today when it's raining and I don't have anything else to do, I might as well seed some stuff indoors because I've got plenty of room to do it. Most of my zucchini and my squash, I normally just direct seed it out into the garden and have it grown that way. Now the ones that I seed indoors, I do sell a lot of my transplants, so that's why I usually seed a bunch and pot them up and up pot them. That way I can take them up to the farmer's market and it's easier for them to transplant out. But there's a lot of stuff that I do like to plant and direct sow. Your sunflowers, for example. I do have some, you can see them in the background here. I do have some sunflowers that are actually growing and doing well. But these are the ones that I'm going to sell. The ones that I'm going to plant for myself, I will direct sow those into the garden because they're quick growers and I don't have to mess with transplanting them. Two of the things that we're going to do right now, we've already seeded out our Jubilee watermelons. And I didn't do a video on it, but I will do a video on the orange tender sweet. We're going to try those and see those. I've tried these once before, I think last year, but I think I got some bad seed because I didn't get not one single one germinate. To where my Jubilees I had like a 92%, 93% germination rate. And then this year we're going to grow some honeydew. So let's go ahead and we'll get started doing these. Remember, we're using seed start mix on everything that we use, or that we seed start. Garden soil mix with vermiculite and perlite when we transplant into these smaller pots. And if we're going to pot anything in a 8-inch to 10-inch or bigger pot, like if we're going to, I'll usually use any type of potting mix, it doesn't matter. Not really potting soil, and use potting mix. It's got the big chunks in it that, as long as the container's big enough and the transplants are big enough. But anytime I'm seeding anything, I'm going to use the starting mix. Same stuff you can buy at Walmart for $4 or $5. All this starting mix is right here anyway is just peat moss, a little bit of vermiculite, and probably a little bit of perlite. I don't see a whole lot of perlite in here, but so it looks like more vermiculite and peat moss. So, but that is dry, so we need to add some water. While we're doing this, and what we're doing is we're planting or seeding out honeydew and the orange tender sweet melons. And while we do that, I want to kind of go over It's mid-March right now, and my zone is zone 8. I'm going to pull this off of here while I talk because it'll move the camera around, and I'm sure it will annoy the heck out of you. Anyway, while I mix this up, let's talk about it. This is mid-March. I'm in zone 8, and if you followed along, I'll kind of give you a quick timeline of where we started all the way back from mid-December, and I'll talk about that while I seed this stuff up. So, mid-December, that's whenever I decided for my zone. Now, remember, this is for my zone, zone 8. If you're in zone 7 or 6, you know, the timeline's going to be a little bit different. This is all going off of the last frost date. My last frost date for my area is March the 31st. Between March 30th and 31st, somewhere in that area. So in mid-December, that's when we seeded out our onion seeds. So we done that a little before Christmas, and I want to say we done the red burgundy and the Texas Gano, I believe it is. So, and then from there we let them, because the onions take a long time before they germinate. We're talking 12, 14 weeks, or not germinate, 12 to 14 weeks before they're ready to go out and transplant. And I'll leave a link to that, because when you're doing onion seeds, you really need to concentrate on whether or not, for your zone, whether you're going to be needing a long day or short day. And I've got videos on my channel that really break that down a lot. So, and I don't want to hash all that. It'll take forever to do all that. The first week of January is when we decided that we needed to seed out our extremely hot peppers. Now, like your ghost peppers, your Trinidad's, Carolina Reapers, all your extremely hot peppers, sometimes they can take up to a month to germinate, and then they still take, you know, 8 weeks or so before they're ready to transplant. So that's why we choose to start ours in the first week of January, especially on those extremely hot peppers. And I do have a video on that as well, of when we started them, how we started them, and a little more on that. And I can also link that in the description if you want. If not, you can go to my channel and you can probably find it. So anyway, we got this seed, or we got the seed started out, and the honeydew we're going to bury about a 1/4 inch deep. So remember, I just like to use this. A lot of people, you can do this, you can take the seed, you can push it down, you cover it up, it doesn't matter. You can take one of these little things and you can poke a hole in it, whatever you want to do. But like I said, there's probably 10, 15 different ways you can do this. A lot of this stuff that we're doing today, you could direct sow into the ground, but we're not going to worry about that right now because this is the way I do it. Anyway, so the last week of January is when, oh, that one's pretty, got that one packed pretty tight. Don't want to tighten it up too much. Alright, the last week of January, that's when we decided to plant our regular pepper seeds, or not the extremely hot, your regular jalapenos, chili peppers, stuff like that. We planted those and the tomato seed at the same time, because the last week of January, that gives us roughly 8 to 9 weeks before our last frost, and it usually takes tomato seeds and pepper seeds 7 to 10 days to germinate, some of them up to 14 days, and then about 6 to 8 weeks after that before they're ready to transplant. So that's got that covered. Now then, what we're going to do real quick is I bought these. You know, I usually buy my seeds from either Johnny Seeds or My Gardener, but I bought these at I believe it was Atwood's is where I got these. It's the only place I could find honeydew. So, and these seeds, I'm not 100% sure. This first year I've grown them. I don't know why they're pink. I don't know if it's the same coating that they put on for your sweet corn. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna try to just plant one seed per cell, just like so. And like, gotta quit putting 2 seeds per cell. But anyway, we're gonna do that, and we'll do that through this whole thing. All right, now we got all these, we got all of our seeds in, and we're just gonna cover the top with our soil. Lightly cover the top. They're 1/4 inch deep. All right, so back to what we were talking about. Mid-February, that's when we put and seeded out our lettuce, broccoli, kale. Now, the lettuce and kale, you can actually plant that in ground at a little bit later date, but I like to plant mine and get a head start, so I seeded mine out. And I done that mid-February. Mid-February is where our onions were ready to go. So we planted our onions out in the garden. And I do have videos on all this stuff I'm talking about, so I don't want to go over a whole bunch of it. But if you're interested in it, just know you can go to my channel, and I'll link some of them in the description below. But for the most part, they'll be on my channel if you want to go more into depth. So, and also in mid-February, that is where we decided that we were going to pot up our tomatoes and our peppers. They were all about yay high, or about that tall, I don't know. I've got videos on that as well. We potted those up, and I think that's all we did in, mid-February. Then it got to March the 1st, which is a couple of weeks ago, and that's where we took, you can take your transplants of your lettuce, your kale, your broccoli, and you can take those into the garden. Now, the kale, the broccoli, and the lettuce are all cool season crops, so it's not going to hurt them if get a light frost, a light freeze on them once they get established. And March 10th, which was a few days ago, last weekend or so, that is when we seeded our cucumbers and squash. I didn't get a video on the squash, but the squash is going to be just like we're doing here with the honeydew and the melons. And so that's pretty much caught up to our timeline from mid-December to March 10th. And remember, I'm in zone 8. So if you're in zone 9, you could probably do this earlier. If you're in zone 7, you probably timeline will be a little off. Just remember to go off your last frost date. And my last frost date was March 30th or 31st, somewhere in that area. So now then, all we're going to do now is going to lightly water the top a little bit, our pre-moistened soil, and then we're going to take and bottom water the bottoms and put these under the grow light. And we'll do the same thing with our orange tender sweet and see if we can get those to grow. And that'll about wrap it up. That's our timeline from December till now. This would be the best times for my zone to seed and plant stuff. So, is that the only time you can do it? No, it's not. You can do it like right now. I mean, if you wanted to, technically, but you'd have to do it pretty quick within this week. You could go back and watch my video on seeding tomatoes, and you could probably still get your tomato seeds out before it's too late. But remember, the tomatoes can take 120 days. So if you have a real hot summer, then it may be too late. You may need to go ahead and go buy some transplants this year, and then next year start the seeding process a little earlier. That's usually what I did when I first started gardening, is by the time March rolled around, I'm like, oh, that'd be cool to seed some tomatoes, and then got to realizing that, hey, you're way too late for that, especially in my zone. Now, if you're in zone like 6 or 5, yeah, you probably right mid-time. I don't know enough about those zones up there. Maybe you can leave some comments down there if you're from those zones, and let us know when y'all plant your tomato seeds and see the difference in the zones. So anyway, like, comment, share this video, think about subscribing to the channel, and hit that little bell notification, and you'll be notified every time I put a new video out. Like always, keep it growing.